Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me to share with you a little bit here. So, I'm a professor of digitalization. My research background is in information systems. In recent years, I've really made a shift towards focusing on artificial intelligence in both my research and teaching. So, my teaching is mainly focused right now on courses. I have courses in the Artificial Intelligence for Business Transformation program, where I teach computer programming support and also business intelligence with data mining. And I teach in some other programs. I actually also teach an elective in the IMBD in the spring, and it's an online elective on business intelligence with data mining, and that is related to teaching non-technical students how to use practical, user-friendly data mining analysis tools. I also teach a course in the Page M1, Understanding AI in Business Context, which is a non-technical managerial focus on what managers need to know about AI. My research recently has been focusing on explainable AI, which has to do with helping people understand what AI is actually doing and how it gets its results, mainly so that managers can take effective action. So that's a little bit of professional background. I also teach a course on research methods for the AI for Business Transformation program, and so I'm quite comfortable with research methods courses and teaching students what they need to know for the academic theses. Let me go ahead and share my slides, and I will make. Let me share my screen. So I will make these slides available after for you. Can
Thank
you
you.
see? Can you see the slides? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, very well.
Okay, very good. So uh, here I'm going to be very focused because in November 2022, ChatGPT was released, the free research preview, and that has really rocked the world. This is, I'll say, has ushered in the third major wave of AI. The first major wave, well, it's been going since the 1960s, but it never really left academia very much because computers were not powerful enough to apply the theory that computer scientists were developing. But when computers caught up in the mid 2000s, and when deep learning was, computers were powerful enough that deep learning could actually solve practical problems, that launched what I would call the second wave. Uh, this is mainly from the society perspective. Academics might have more waves, but where people in their consciousness started knowing what AI was. But when ChatGPT was released, for me, this is the third wave because people now have known that AI can do so many things. AI is in the background, AI is important, but up till now, AI has been a very technical thing. If you don't have the technical skills, you know AI is out there, there's tools that use AI, but you don't have direct control over it. And the revolution that now ChatGPT is not the technology is called GPT, generative general purpose transformers. Uh, and I'm not going to get technical at all, but the point that ChatGPT brought in an interface where people with absolutely no technical skill can now interact with AI and get AI to do tasks for them, customized to what you want. And that to me is absolutely revolutionary. Um, and that's the wave we're in. So it's 1 year down the line, and we're still grappling with it. So I'd like to. So I'm learning. Uh, this is not like best practices. This is sharing my learning in progress. So as far as learning goes, so I have professional expertise in AI, but more importantly, I use ChatGPT almost every day. I find all kinds of reasons, at least in my professional life, almost every day. I find reasons and excuses to use it, ask questions, and through that intense interaction, I have some sense of some things it can do well and some of its limitations. So a lot of what I'm sharing comes from that. Okay. So just a moment. Let me make my cursor a little bit more visible.
During the presentation, raise your hand and
I'm sorry?
I told my class that if they have questions, they raise hand and I will interrupt you.
Yes, please interrupt anytime, because I cannot see. I can't, with my setup here. I cannot see Teams. Someone raise their hand on Teams. I can't see the chat. So yeah, Isabel, please be the moderator and just interrupt anytime.
Okay, I will.
Okay. So for using generative AI. So I'll clarify one thing. I'm going to talk about principles of generative AI in general, but in practice, I'll talk about ChatGPT concretely, simply because that's the one I know well. I use ChatGPT, as I said, almost every day. There's many other generative AI technologies like Google Bard, Llama, Claude, and many others, but I don't have personal experience with them. So what I'm saying generalizes to generative AI. So I'll try to be precise when I mean principles that apply to any kind of generative AI. I'll use the term generative AI. And when it's specific to ChatGPT based on my personal experience, but perhaps other generative AI technologies are different, I'll specify ChatGPT. But before going on, I've been using generative AI, but what is generative AI? It's basically artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is generally computers that do tasks that normally we would think requires human intelligence. Be assured, computers do not have anything like the intelligence that humans have. They are not sentient. They don't understand anything of what's going on. But when we can train computers to act and respond in a way similar to how intelligent human beings can respond, in a way that is useful to us, we call that artificial intelligence. Generative AI is AI that creates, it doesn't just give responses that we say, if we give this input, give this response, but it actually creates responses such as text answers, conversations, speech, pictures, that it didn't just copy from somewhere and bring it in. It brought things together in new combinations that can enter into a conversation with people. That's what we mean by generative AI. So from the perspective of academic theses and more generally for academic research, there's a number of principles that we need to consider if and how generative AI can help us. And here's a framework that I've set up, and this is largely responsible through a short course, Introduction to ChatGPT, using DataCamp. DataCamp is an online data science service for online courses, and they have a short course on Introduction to ChatGPT, which very much influenced this, but this is a bit different from what they presented, so I've customized it in a way that I think makes a little bit more sense. And the key question here is, should we use generative AI or not? So this is a very general framework. It's not just for research, it's for any question, should we use generative AI? So the key decision point, whether we should use generative AI or not, depends on, do we need absolutely true results? that means, are we asking questions where there is a true answer, there is a right answer, and we need to know if the answer it gives us is true? Or are we asking questions where we're just looking for ideas, inspiration? So an example for the distinction, if we need absolutely true results, um, uh, let's say in business scenario, uh, okay, so like what are the categories of SWOT analysis? So we've heard of SWOT analysis. So what is SWOT analysis in business, and what are the categories of it? Well, this is a well-developed framework, and uh, it has been developed. So we want to, if it gives us an answer, we want it to give us the classic correct answer. Or what is the business model canvas? We've heard of that. We don't really understand it. There is a correct answer of what it is or what it is not. So that's a case where we need absolutely true results. Then a case where we don't need absolutely true results is, I'd like to develop a marketing campaign that reaches out to people aged 30 to 40 that are males that live in the south of France. What are some things that I need to take care of for this demographic? There, you need ideas and considerations and inspiration. It's not a right or wrong. It's that some ideas are useful. You might keep them or not. So there, we don't need absolutely true results. Okay, so this is a critical distinction. Now, in cases where we need absolutely true results, the key issue is, are we able to verify what the generative AI tells us? And I'll get more into this. We have to understand that generative AI does not know if it's telling the truth or not. It just does its best. So we cannot and should not trust what it tells us. We have to know, can we verify independently what it tells us, if it's correct or not? If we can independently verify, it gives us an answer, then from some other source we can check, is that correct? Then you may use generative AI, but be sure to verify its results. But if it's a scenario where it gives us an answer and we have no way of verifying if it's true or not ourselves, then it is unsafe to use it. We should not trust it just because it says something. I'll get more into details about this, but this is the framework. However, in scenarios where we're just looking for ideas, that the answer doesn't need to be absolutely true or false, then okay. The next question we should ask is, does our query involve sensitive data or not? So like maybe coming to the marketing campaign example, in order to customize a market campaign, do we have to actually include the customers' names and maybe their addresses and their demographic information so that we can really customize the campaign to them? Or are we just giving general demographic information, nothing that is personally identifying? Well, if what you're looking for requires sensitive data to be valid, then you have to realize OpenAI and Google, or these companies that produce the best quality generative AI, are private companies, and you should not share sensitive private data with them. When you ask them questions, they will incorporate that data of the questions into their training data set, and they will use it to train the model, and those answers might end up in other people's questions. It is not safe to enter any sensitive data when you're interacting with these sites. On a side note, when you come to the commercial level, I saw that ChatGPT now has an enterprise version where if a company pays, it will give the answers, it will not save the data, it won't be used for training. So there can be exceptions for that. But in general, as individuals, never enter any sensitive personal data when you're interacting with these generative AIs. Otherwise, it'll become public. However, if you're query is generic, and again, you don't need an absolute true answer, then the question becomes, do you need legal ownership of the results? And what I mean by this is, for instance, the maybe a more practical example is if maybe you're using generative AI to create a logo for your company or something, and so you want to create a logo, and a logo doesn't need to be absolutely true. It's just an idea. You're not giving it sensitive data. You're telling about the nature of your company, the colors you like, and so on. But you would like to set a registered trademark on those results. Then the question is, whatever it generates, who owns it? This is a legally murky area. It's brand new. The question is that it's not a human who generated it. It's generative AI. So do you own it? Now, for sure, the companies that generated it do not own it. For example, OpenAI, the owner of ChatGPT, is very explicit. Anything you create with ChatGPT does not belong to OpenAI. It belongs to you. So that is very clear in the terms of service. They're not taking ownership of anything that is generated. You enter the prompt, it gives you the result, go, it's yours. OpenAI has no legal claim. That's not the problem. But the problem is that what if someone else asks for a similar text, or like maybe something other than a logo, maybe you're using ChatGPT to create a blog article talking about your products and what your company does, and it creates that text for you. Well, when you take that, there's a matter of copyright. You have copyright to it, except that we'll see, where did it come from? Is it really yours? Someone else asks a similar question. It produces a similar answer for them. Whose is it? These questions are not legally clear. Okay, so you need to be careful when you're trying to take legal ownership. However, if it's just ideas and inspiration, and then a marketing campaign, ideas for a marketing campaign, you go ahead and do the marketing campaign based on the ideas you like, you may freely use it. It's great for that. Okay. Any questions about this framework? I'm going to, in the rest of this session, I'm going to come back to this again and again, specifically apply to the context of academic theses. But this framework is very general to any use of any kind of generative AI. Are there any questions about this framework before I go on?
Questions? So far, so good.
Okay. All right. Now, before we get into academic theses, there's a lot of ethical principles of the appropriate way to use AI. And there are two core principles that need to be highlighted. Very interestingly, at SKEMA Business School, as Isabella mentioned, she and I are on the ethics committee, the research ethics committee. And in September 2022, we released an update to the research ethics code, and we included a section specifically about AI ethics, because that is an emergent topic. And then in November, ChatGPT was released, which really, as I said, has revolutionized the field of AI. But I'm very happy to see that the ethics principles that we set up then are fully applicable and actually don't need an update or a change. They might need to clarify how they apply to generative AI. But there's two particular ethics principles that are very relevant to generative AI. One is, so these are quotations directly from the SKEMA Research Code of Ethics from September 2022. Human responsibility and accountability. AI ethical concerns mainly arise because of humans offloading their personal ethical responsibilities to algorithms. Thus, it is paramount that for any decision made using AI, a definite human being, not an organization or organizational unit, must be held accountable. If such a person takes responsibility, then they should take care to vet the scope of decisions of the AI. So the principle here is that AI is not responsible for anything. AI cannot be responsible for anything. It is humans who are responsible. It is the humans who use the AI, who choose to use the AI, that are responsible for what is done with the AI. So some examples here that come up here. Early on when ChatGPT came out, some academic researchers use ChatGPT a lot for creating their articles, and they wanted to acknowledge that, so they cited ChatGPT as a co-author. Well, that is impossible. It's just a tool. AI is a tool. The authors are the people who use the AI to do whatever they do. And that means that if there's any mistakes or errors, the human being is responsible, not the AI that made the error. So I'll come back to this, but this is crucial, that we have to realize if we use AI, we are responsible for all problems, all mistakes, any errors generated by the AI. And we cannot blame the AI. The second core principle is transparency concerning the use of AI. So in the SKEMA Research Code of Ethics, those who are impacted by AI should be informed that they are interacting with AI. That means that whenever we use AI and our use of AI interacts with another human being, the other human being has the right to know that they are not interacting only directly with us. They are interacting with us augmented by AI. In other words, they have a right to know that we use AI in giving the response, in telling them whatever we did. This is evolving. For instance, like just now, I'm thinking that if maybe you're applying for a job and you have a motivation letter and you use generative AI to help you in creating the letter, do you have to mention a note that you use the AI? Well, probably not to that detail. But for sure, if there's something like a document, like for sure a thesis, where you use ChatGPT for generating part of your thesis, you have to mention that somewhere. And I'll talk about where. But the core thing is that if someone expects that what you're doing was 100% human, but actually you use even 1% AI to help, it is your responsibility to mention them. And by the way, I use AI for part of what I did. You don't have to go into detail what exactly, but you just have to mention, this is not 100% for me, this is me assisted with AI. And if you hide the fact that you use AI when the person expects it's 100% you, then that is a serious ethical violation regarding the use of AI. Okay.
We have questions.
Yes.
I have a question for you, Chief. Not question, but me. Referring to the second point, the fact that so we have to, in some way, to declare that we use AI. So I imagine that at a certain point we need to quote AI in some way. In your presentation, are you going to explain us how to quote
I'm sorry,
AI?
Can you concretely explain what do you mean by quote AI? Can you give a concrete example what that means?
I'm writing my dissertation and I'm looking for a definition for a concept. And I ask AI, can you provide me a definition for consumer loyalty? AI provides the definition. And I want to explain my supervisor that in providing the definition of a thesis, I use artificial intelligence. In which way I'm going to quote the source?
Okay, so very good. So I'm going to get into this, but I can answer that question directly.
No, but if you...
No, it's okay. I'll answer directly right now. because maybe I was not planning to go into that detail, but again, this is evolving. I'm only sharing my experience. As I said, it's a new area. We're learning new practices, and I'll say especially now that we're just starting to get a grips on it, I think it's much safer to do a little bit more than maybe what is necessary, but we still need to be reasonable. So my take on that, you'll see, well, you know what? Let me just go to the next point here, and then I'll make it a little bit clearer. So these two principles, human responsibility and accountability, transparency concerning the use of AI. So a company like ChatGPT's producer, OpenAI, these are core principles for them. Even when they release ChatGPT, they have a terms of service. And there's a link here. Again, I'll share the slides at the end. That leads to a page that describes some of the ethical principles that summarizes some of the things that are terms of service. But OpenAI's terms of use require that if you use ChatGPT, you must take full responsibility of what you do. They said OpenAI is not responsible, ChatGPT is not responsible, you who use it must take full responsibility. And OpenAI requires that you must declare that you use ChatGPT and what you're doing. You are not if you agree to use ChatGPT, you must say that you're using it. And here they have a suggestion that in the acknowledgement section, so you should have a general note for acknowledgement, and they have a suggestion here. The author generated this text in part with GPT-3, OpenAI's large-scale language generation model. GPT-3 is actually before ChatGPT came out, so they've had this principle for a while. Upon generating draft language, the author reviewed, edited, and revised the language to their own liking and takes ultimate responsibility for the content of this publication. So this is just a suggestion text that you can put in the acknowledgement. And following this here, I'll say no, you do not need to put quotation marks around this definition that you copied and pasted from ChatGPT. As long as you make a note like this in the acknowledgement section, that is enough. Because it's kind of like, really one way to look at it is that, okay, you write a document and use a grammar checker to correct what you did. Today, you don't even mention that in acknowledgements. That's just a given. Of course, you use a spell checker, you use a grammar checker. Although it's much more advanced, that's basically what it is. It's like a highly advanced grammar checker. You don't need to cite it. You don't even need to quote the sentences where you used it. But you must mention clearly somewhere, and appropriate places in the acknowledgement section, that you used it. And in general, just very brief like this, say in what way you used it, and make it clear that you take full responsibility for the end. Okay. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, I think it's better interrupt, ask questions, even if I'm going to talk about them later. Go ahead like that, please. Okay, so these are core ethical principles, and they will play out. So now I want to come to using generative AI for academic writing. Now for academic writing, coming back to the decision framework, some issues when we're doing academic writing, such as for a thesis, you do need absolutely true results. You need to know that what you're saying is true or accurate. So you have to consider, can you verify the accuracy or not? And there's a lot of uses where you don't need absolutely true results. You just need ideas. Now, when you're producing, generally, the matter of sensitive data is not an issue. I guess it could be like if you're having it. Okay, just now I realized I overlooked one very practical and important case. Maybe you have interview transcripts and you want to load them into ChatGPT. Well, that would be a case which is kind of unsafe because you're putting in confidential information, which you have promised to keep confidential, and yet is being trained. So I should probably add that is a consideration, that would be something that would be very useful, but because it's sensitive, you should not do. So both of these areas come in different places. So one fundamental principle is that it is very risky to use generative AI to create drafts for you. So for example, say, okay, I'm writing on this topic on how to market. I'm just trying to make up examples here. I want to market chairs to the south of France or something. Give me an introduction for an article like that. Or something like give me a summary of the general market statistics for chairs throughout the European Union. So something like that is general market statistics. They're either accurate or not. Well, this is very risky because generative AI might hallucinate. So hallucination in general means imagining, seeing things that are not there. In AI terms, that's a technical term that basically means generative AI invents facts out of thin air. So if you ask it to give you market statistics for a certain industry, if in its training set it has some statistics, it will put them there. But if it's missing some statistics, it will just make them up. It will just make up numbers, make up products, make up countries. It will just make stuff up. That's how it works. Because it doesn't know what is true or not. It just knows that you asked it a question and it's going to try its best to give you an answer. And the worst part of it is that whenever it gives you an answer, it gives it an answer so confidently that it says, okay, here it is, it's like this. The only time it will say, well, this is not sure, there's different views, are when a lot of people on the web have written things like, this is a difficult question, it's not sure. But if it's trained on a lot of reports, and reports say, here are the facts like this, then it will give you facts like this, but when the facts are missing, it will make them up, but it will give it to you as if these are well-known things. And it does this as a standard way it works. So it is crucial that anything you do, you verify it. You are 100% responsible for any false information that you submit. If you, so this example, you ask it to give industry market statistics, and some of the results you give are false, and you submit that in your thesis, you are guilty of academic fraud. Okay? Please be very clear about that. And you can't say ChatGPT made me do it. You made stuff up. Oh, you said, oh, it's because ChatGPT. Well, you chose to use ChatGPT, and you did not double check to make sure that what it said was correct. That is academic fraud, and the result is an automatic failure of your thesis. Okay? And one thing I'll add here, at SKEMA, students, you work on your thesis in pairs, so you need to have a very serious and thorough conversation with your partner, because your partner might be doing things that you don't know. You divide that your partner needs to do this, you have to do that. They use ChatGPT, they make stuff up. Two of you submit it with your name. Well, as far as we can tell, both of your names are on it, you're both guilty of fraud. Okay? This is a major risk, and we need to take this very seriously. Okay, so I cannot underestimate this. A second point is we have to understand how generative AI is trained. It's generally trained on information on the internet. So the people who trained it just read web pages, documents, books, anything they could feed it, millions of documents and so on. And when you ask it a question, it tries to take things from here, from there, and put it together in an answer. And sometimes some portions are copied directly. And in general, generative AI does not cite its sources. It's getting better, and I will show you some tools that get it to cite its sources. But in general, it does not cite its sources. And I forgot to add the link here. I think I'll update the slides and include the link. But a recent study by a leading company that has plagiarism detection and AI-generated content detection, they did a study, and they found that up to 30%, like when you ask questions of generative AI, up to 30%, sometimes more, of the answers are plagiarized. What does plagiarism mean? It means it copied word for word or with very few changes from a source and did not cite the source. So you can assume that if you're asking it questions that are longer than a few sentences, that there is some plagiarism in there. Just take that as a fact. If you submit that, you are 100% guilty of plagiarism. And if you try to copyright that, because these sources are usually copyrighted, well, they are copyrighted. By default, anything that someone else writes is copyrighted. So you are guilty of plagiarism, and if there's a lot of it, you might be guilty of copyright violation. That's it. Okay, it's not if for that's just the way it is. This should scare you because it scares me. Okay, if it doesn't scare you, then you don't fully understand what that means. That means it is not safe to ask generative AI, create this draft for me, and then you maybe modify it a little bit and submit that. There's some things are made up, some things are plagiarized. Okay, so we have to be really careful about this. So now you might think that means, okay, I'm not going to touch this, I'm not going to risk anything. I said we're learning, but the bulk of this presentation is not, oh, this is dangerous, don't use it. It's how can you use it safely. Okay, as I said, I use it almost every day. There are fantastic ways to use it, and that's the bulk of what I'm going to present. So it is much safer to use generative AI to revise the initial draft you created yourself. So if you write an initial draft, maybe 2-3 paragraphs, and you give that to the generative AI and you ask it to expand it, or you ask it to polish it, correct the grammar, then you know the source. The source is you. That is safe. It just modified what you gave it. That is perfectly safe. But you have to do the work to do the initial draft. But it's still very useful. One thing that I find very useful that I do a lot is because in the writing process, writing takes time, and especially for, I know probably most SKEMA students, English is not your first language. My case is my first language, so I don't have as much this issue, but I still do. It takes a long time to write, but so a lot of times I find it easier to talk about what I want to do. And so a basic workflow I do is that, okay, I have the idea of what I want to say, then I speak it and record it, and I'll show you tools later that you can transcribe your speech, what you say, into text, and then ask generative AI to polish what you wrote into academic language. Because you spoke it and it's what you know, you kind of know what you're saying is reliable, and the source is you, and then it just writes it into nice academic speech. That is very safe. Even one thing you can do in that process, you can speak what you say, and you can ask ChatGPT, is what I'm saying accurate? And then it can check based on what it knows or thinks it knows. Well, these points are accurate, but these points are not quite accurate. And then that's the flag, and you can say, okay, you double check so that what you thought you said, and you can correct it, and then you say, okay, let me rephrase it like this, and then you go back and forth with this conversation, and it eventually writes it out in polished language. You know that you're the original source. You verified that it's accurate. Perfectly safe, and that really speeds up the writing process. So this is a very safe way to use it for academic writing. Then, as I mentioned in response to the last question, you must absolutely be fully transparent about your use of generative AI. In the context of a thesis, the first thing this means is be absolutely sure that you tell your supervisor throughout your thesis process how you're using generative AI. Let them know, okay? Do not even try to hide that. Tell them openly. Now, the thing here is that, again, this is very new. A lot of supervisors will say, no, you're not allowed to use generative AI. And that's, if you're someone who wants to use it, who already uses it, that can be very difficult. You can try to convince them. You can show them the recording of this session and say that there's safe ways. I'm trying to use it in safe ways, and that might convince them, because this is new to them and a lot don't want to take risks. Maybe finally just say that no, but you really want to use it. Well, I think that's a good reason to switch to another supervisor. He's more comfortable with this evolving technology. But your supervisor has to know how you're using it and has to be comfortable with that. Otherwise, don't use it, because people involved must know they're interacting with AI. Okay. And then in the acknowledgement section, you saw the little example text. You must put a note like that, and that's enough. You don't need to, no matter how much you use it, that little acknowledgement in the acknowledgement section is enough. You don't need to go further than that. Okay. So these are just very high level, but crucial principles. Okay, any questions before I go on?
Do you have points that you want to write?
I'm sorry?
Yes, I'm asking my students if they have questions about that. So, and a practical questions about this point. So, because now they are in the process to look for a supervisor. According to your common sense, Chitu, it's good maybe to establish the rule of the game about using ChatGPT maybe before having the
absolutely at the very beginning. Well, if you want to use it, you need to clarify that from the first meeting with the supervisor. Okay, don't wait. It's just something that needs to be clarified. And again, a lot of supervisors will be uncomfortable because it's new. They don't want to take the risk. You can tell them that you've had special training on how to use it safely, and you can share these slides with them, and that will probably put a lot of supervisors at ease. Yeah, okay.
Fine with you. Now, Chito, I understand why the last dissertation I read, they were so fantastic in terms of English.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay.
And for me, that's actually great. It's great to be able to write great English when it's not your first language, but you have to have the notes that I use ChatGPT or use Google Bard or whatever to help me. You just have to be honest about it.
Yeah. We let you go on.
Okay. Okay. So I'm in this session. So far, I've spent some time laying down specific principles. For the rest of this session, I'm going to go through a lot of practical examples and cases. So here, first of all, I'm going to go through some uses of ChatGPT for research before writing. And what I mean by that are, so The actual writing part is when you're submitting something, you're putting your name on it, and then that's when the legal uncertainty comes in. But cases where in the research process, before you actually start writing or before you finalize your writing. Okay. So one use case, and this might not apply so much to IMBD students, but sometimes yes, is computer programming. So I do a lot of computer programming. ChatGPT, generative AI has really revolutionized computer programming because it is so very useful. But just to understand conceptually why, when you write a computer program or you do data analysis, so I'll give an example with Excel, which I think is more relevant to a lot of you. When you're doing some computer tasks, you need correct results. You're trying to do something with the computer to process the data, and you need it to be correct. So yes, the question is, can you verify the accuracy of the results yourself? The thing about computer programming is that if what ChatGPT tells you to do, it works, it gives you the result that you expect, then it works. If it doesn't give you the right result, if it doesn't actually do what you're trying to do, you know it didn't give you what you wanted. So you can interactively confirm that what it's telling you is correct. And that's why it's so useful in this category of tasks. So here I don't know if you're familiar with ChatGPT, but when you use ChatGPT, it saves by default, it saves your conversations. You can disable that if you don't want. But here, so I'm referring to past conversations, past usages that I've actually used as an examples. So here, let's see. I was using Excel data validation. I was creating an Excel sheet, and I wanted to hide blank cells. So it's a particular thing. How do I do this in Microsoft Excel? And so here it gave some tips on how I can do that particular task. Then some parts were not clear. Give me an Excel formula that can actually do this. And here it gives an Excel formula that I can copy and paste. And here I ask, well, what does this actually mean in your answer? So it explains its answer a little bit more, and then I ask, give it an answer here. The one thing that comes up sometimes, especially if your operating system, if your Excel version is not in English. So I actually, for a long time, I use Excel in Spanish because I'm trying to learn Spanish and immerse myself in Spanish, and using functions in Spanish is very frustrating because they're all renamed. So I say, okay, so translate that into Spanish version of Excel, and it did that. I tried it. It didn't work. I said, so yeah, it made up a formula that doesn't exist, but because I'm trying in Excel, it didn't do it. I know it made it up. I said, hey, that didn't work. What's the correct thing? Then it tried again, and it gave me the correct name. And that's the idea, that even if what it does is not perfect, I make errors, because you're trying it, it doesn't work. You get back to it, it tries again, and then it eventually got the response, and then I asked it more questions. So if you're struggling with Excel or with any computer program, it knows how to do a lot of tasks. If it doesn't quite work at first, tell it. If you get an error message, copy and paste that error message. A lot of times it will say, here's what's going on. You can try this. Very, very useful. Another use case is explaining statistical and machine learning procedures. So if you're trying to analyze data or something, and there's this technique, like maybe in your case, use linear regression to do that. What is linear regression? So in this case, I've heard of fixed effects models. I didn't really understand what they were, and I said, please explain that. What is a fixed effects model? Then it gave an explanation. Then I'd say clarify, give more details, until I finally kind of understood the topic. There is one caveat I have to give here, something I've learned from my usage of it. Especially for you as master's students, this is probably safe, because most of the things you're looking for, most of the concepts are widely used. They're just new to you. But as a researcher, some of the things I do are really cutting edge and are not used by that many people. And I found that in that case, ChatGPT makes things up. It gives answers. They sound very logical. And because it's new to me, I can't really verify if what it's saying is correct. And it sounds so convincing. But then later, I found that no, what it said was completely wrong, completely made up. So don't fully trust its explanations of things. Use it to kind of get a big picture, but just double check from another source to make sure it's consistent. Double check with a reliable source to make sure it's consistent. And if what is said is correct, ChatGPT can really help you understand complex topics, because you can ask interactively the exact part that you don't understand. And for techniques that are widely used, it does a pretty good job there. Another case for translating academic content. So there's an article, so I do a lot of machine learning. There's an article that had, that was explaining a new technique. The article is in Portuguese, so because I can read Spanish, I can understand some Portuguese, I could understand most of what I needed, but there's one paragraph or some technical detail that I didn't really understand, so I told it, okay, I copied and pasted that, translate that into English, so I could really understand, okay, so I understood that detail. So for you, it might be the reverse. Maybe you're reading an article, something that there's an English detail that you don't really understand. Ask it to translate it into your native language. ChatGPT understands many languages, so just this point of confusion, translate to your native language so that it's clearer, helps, and it helps you access some things. So these are, and the translation is a little bit more reliable because you know the language a bit, so you can kind of verify the translation makes sense. So always have the caution that you can't trust 100% what it says, but this is still useful. It can help you in understanding and doing a lot of tasks.
Chito, I have a question here, because this last point, actually, for me as a researcher, is super useful, and I imagine also for the dissertation. In your experience, you found ChatGPT more useful than a Google Translator?
Okay, that's a good point. You know what? I will show you. I've never tried to compare ChatGPT or Google Translate. I just use ChatGPT because I guess I'm used to it. It's a little bit faster.
Okay.
And the thing is, because I know it doesn't do just translation, I can ask it follow-up questions and so on.
Yeah, maybe
But as far as
for
accuracy of translation, there's another tool I recommend, and I'll show you that in a couple of slides. Okay.
It's interesting because actually the advantage is that you can go on with a conversation.
I think that's one of the big reasons I use that. So, but I'll show you another tool. If it's strict translation quality, I think there's one that I think is just the best that exists. I'll come to that shortly. Then,
do you have questions for us? No? Fine. Okay.
Okay. Then, now, scholarly literature searches. This is a big area, because this is one of the most challenging parts of a thesis, where you want to do your literature review and you want to find relevant articles. So this is a scenario where do you need absolutely true results? Well, yes. If you're trying to do a literature review and saying the literature says this about my topic, there's studies about this, you want that to be correct, okay? And the question is, can you verify the accuracy of what it's saying that the literature says? Well, if you can verify it, mainly by looking it up, then yeah, you can use it. But if for some reason you cannot verify, it says that the studies say this and that, and you can't verify it, then it's unsafe. So let me give you an example of one of my first attempts to use ChatGPT for literature searches. And this, I really come up to the point that ChatGPT makes stuff up. It invents facts, and it even invents fake citations. So here's a little. One of my first experiences. So here, in this particular case, actually, I was writing a scholarly article, and I wanted some citations in support of what I was saying. And so it's not even asking for ideas. These are things that I believe are correct, but I'd like some citations that can back me up and make sure that what I'm saying is actually correct. So I'm going to give some statements for scholarly article, and I want, let me make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it. I'm going to give you some statements. I want you to find authoritative citations for these statements or claims. And here's the domain. They should come from information systems or business management or some related case. Give me the full, properly formatted citation with a URL directly linking to the article. So at the time, I think this was maybe in April or March or April. But since then, it has been updated. But at that time, it said it cannot provide URLs or DOI links. Now it can do that, and I'll show you tools where it can do that. I said, okay, so here, do your best. So my first statement. In statistical inference, relationships hypothesized a priori are tested with a representative sample of data drawn from the population of interest. A very generic statement. So give me a citation that supports that. So here, give me a citation. And here, this textbook is a comprehensive resource. I said, no, I don't want books. I want journal articles because I can't really access the book that it gives me. Okay, I'm sorry. Here, it's a journal article citation from 1925. Okay, please give me something from 2000 onwards. Okay, I'm sorry for my response. Here you go. Here's this article. That is a book. It's not a journal article. I need journal articles. Okay, I apologize for confusion. Here's a journal article. Okay, but even before looking that up, I said, give me the exact quotation from the source. They give me an entire article. And I asked for the exact quotation so that I can verify that it's really saying what I want. I said, oh, I'm sorry for the confusion earlier. You know what? Actually, the citation from is a book review, and it's not suitable to support what you gave. So I just asked you to give me some more details, and I said, oh, it's not even appropriate. Here's another one. And I said, but I'm sorry, I cannot access the full text to give this citation that supports what it said. Okay, can you point me to what part of the article I should look for? Sorry, I can't give you that level of detail, and so on. I said, okay. So I said, let me at least look it up so that I can see if I can find what I'm looking for. I looked it up, and I'm pretty good at finding articles, and I couldn't find the article. I said, okay, are you sure that's correct citation? I'm sorry. No, basically it made it up. It doesn't exist. It made it up out of thin air. Here's another one. I said, okay, I do not want books, only journal articles. Okay, here's another one. That is a book. It's not a journal article. Or maybe it's a book review. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's a book again. And here again, okay, then another reference, okay, it made it up, didn't exist. I went on and on, tried different things, until that's when I first realized it just makes stuff up. Okay, you cannot trust it.
Wow. But Chito, what I noticed is that ChatGPT is much more kind than you in interacting. They apologize a lot.
It's very polite. Oh yes, very gentle. But great thing. Actually, it's very interesting because you have to remember it's not a person, so it's programmed to be polite. Because a lot of times when someone keeps on apologizing like that, you're afraid it's getting frustrated. But no, it doesn't get frustrated. It has infinite patience. So as long as you are patient and you keep on going with it, it will keep on going with you. Which is great, because if you're interacting with a person like that, it starts getting frustrating and then you eventually stop. But no, as long as you're patient, it will keep going on with you, which is great. If you're not patient, that's not so good, but it's at least a lot more patient than you are. Okay. So I'll come to okay. So what do we do with this? Fortunately, there are some. So this was realized very soon, and now there's a number of solutions that try to address the whole thing of literature searches, reliable literature searches with ChatGPT. Now, most of them, guess maybe unfortunately for a lot of us, a lot of people that use the free version of ChatGPT, most of these require the premium, the paid version, ChatGPT Plus, which costs $20 per month plus taxes. And I have ChatGPT Plus subscription. I know for students that might be a bit of, it's a cost.
How much is it?
$20 per month. I think with taxes like $24 per month.
Okay.
So I'll just say this. Okay. Some of the options I'm going to present have a cost to them. And I know as students, that's a cost. So when you're not making income, you're spending a lot of money. But just think strategically, because you are managers in training. You have to think strategically in terms of investment. A monthly fee doesn't mean you're going to pay every month. You can say, here's the month, the 30 or 31 day period, I'm going to do my literature search. Let me pay the $20 or the $24 for that month to have the highest quality ChatGPT version, because it's not just that you can do more things, it's a more advanced, much more intelligent version of ChatGPT than the free version. So the free version is version 3.5. The paid version, you have access to version 4, and you can do plugins like I'm trying to show. So just thinking that. You're working with a partner, split the cost for 1 month, do your literature review for that, and use it to the maximum. So it is absolutely worth it. Okay, so take that perspective. So one option is Consensus. So this is a site, actually, you can actually use this apart from ChatGPT.
Hi friends, welcome back to the channel.
Okay.
Seems like
you can use Consensus apart from ChatGPT. Let's see. And what it does, these things are really advancing rapidly. I think they just recently released their 5.0 version. What it does is that you don't have to even go through ChatGPT. You can go directly through Consensus and interact with it. So actually, they have their monthly fee is like $9 per month. And so without even going through ChatGPT, you can go through their service, and in the background, they use ChatGPT. That's why the free version, try the free version as much as you can, but the free version, it has some more, you can do a lot of searches and get a feel for what it does. And maybe it'll be enough for master's thesis. So you can start with Consensus without even paying for ChatGPT Plus. But to get the most intelligent and the highest quality uses, at least pay a month for $10, and then you have the latest version of ChatGPT with more intelligent summaries and so on. So this video linked here explains basically what it does. But the key thing is that Consensus, you ask questions of the literature and it gets answers from published peer-reviewed articles. So it's not getting answers from ChatGPT generally. It's looking up articles and giving you answers from the articles. It summarizes the articles. It includes direct links to the articles so that you can verify they are real articles. You can look up where it supports that. So this is probably the #1 resource I would suggest that you use to access these capabilities. A second source that is also very high quality is Scholar AI. Now this one is accessible only through ChatGPT+.
Hey everybody, in this video tutorial I'm going to show you.
So again, here I link tutorials that show you how they work, short tutorials. So Scholar AI, again, it has a free option, but unfortunately the free option, because you can only use this as a ChatGPT plugin, you have to pay for ChatGPT and this fee is on top of it. So you cannot use this completely free, unlike Consensus. But it also gives high quality results. Then for a completely free option, there is OA.mg. OA stands for Open Access.
Hello, my name is Jane.
And this talks about the ChatGPT plugin, which you, again, you have to use the paid version of ChatGPT to use. But there is, you can go to their website and do searches directly. But the direct free version that does not go through ChatGPT is a little bit more limited. But again, this might be a completely free option that might help you. The only thing that you cannot discuss with it. You can't ask interactive questions. For that, you need ChatGPT to use. But it does access a lot of papers. Now, I'm assuming that in this research methods course, there's probably a session that talks about searching the literature using SKEMA databases.
Yeah, we had it.
So you might wonder, why do you need that when you can do ChatGPT? Well, the SKEMA databases can access more articles than these services. That's just basically it. With SKEMA, we actually have access to more. There's a lot. I mean, hundreds of thousands of articles that the SKEMA databases can access that these services do not. Because these services, they have to pay for the database they access. SKEMA already pays for that. So they do not replace a direct search. But this is a very good starting point to get an idea what to focus on. And then you can do an expanded search on SKEMA databases to find some more articles. But for a master's thesis, I think this will probably be enough. Okay.
Yeah. I think that if I understand well, Chitu, schema database are more than enough for a master thesis, and the artificial intelligence could simplify a bit students' life in organizing references, I think.
I would say it's not just simplifying by organizing the references. I think the key issue is the conversations. You search for the literature. Okay, no, that's not quite what I'm looking for. Do you have more along this? So you can talk naturally with it, and it will search based on your natural search. That is huge. That is such that really makes the search process a lot more interactive, a lot easier, and for me, it's worth it. I would say. So as an academic researcher, I'm looking for all of the latest sources. This is not enough. For a master's thesis, you don't really have to get all the latest sources. I would think that this is probably a much more practical and very useful approach.
Yeah, it simplifies your life.
Yes. Yes.
Because of the conversation.
Exactly.
Idea.
It's a conversations. And so I rank this in the order. I mean, try them all out, but I rank them in the order which, when I tested them out, I think will probably be most useful for master's thesis. Especially Consensus using the free version. I mean, that might be enough.
And I have a personal question. It's not related to the class, but you as a researcher, you use them to write your article.
To be honest, I did a lot of searching for tools for this class, just to give this session. So some of these I newly discovered, but let me try to hurry up because I think I have 20 more minutes, and I want to show a little case study of what I, as a researcher, do. Okay. One other tool that can be quite useful that I newly discovered is Litmap. So this is a little bit different from the others in that what it does is that it does not it doesn't find new articles completely like that, but what it does is that it kind of maps links in the literature. And, what I mean by that is, let's see if I can show you this quickly. if you have an article that is relevant, so here you can start with general searches, but it works best when you have one or two articles that you know this article is relevant. Do you want more? It finds other articles that cite that article, and it shows the links between the related articles, because articles that cite each other are usually related. And it creates nice maps like this, which can be very useful in showing how the literature is related to each other. So this basically does some automatic bibliometric searches. And this again has a free option for some discovery, just for basic searches. You can visualize up to 100 articles, and that might be quite sufficient for a master's thesis. Okay, but apart from that, if you really like it, you want to do a little bit more, the education version is $10 for a month. Okay, so these are tools that I would recommend. I searched for quite a few, and there's a lot that I don't think are as useful, but these are 4 that I think actually are useful. Okay, then okay, I don't have all my things aligned. For some other AI-powered writing tools, so these are not ChatGPT or generative AI, but these are tools that are powered by AI that I think are very useful for academic writing, including for the thesis. One is grammar correction. So Grammarly is a tool, and I'm surprised how functional it is, and yet the free version is so functional. I mean, English is my first language, is my primary language, and I use Grammarly. I use it for my documents, I use it for my emails, it's integrated, so I use it systematically. And I use the free version, which is very good, and it corrects my English, perfects my English. I strongly recommend you use it for all your English. For my French, I use another tool called Antidote that corrects all the French I write. So my French writing looks pretty good because I have a secret helper. and these are powered by AI, well, by not the latest generative AI, but by classic AI. I think Grammarly has a new generative AI tool, and there's paid version. For translation, Isabella, you asked earlier about translation. I highly recommend DeepL Translator. So this, I think, is widely recognized as the best quality translation tool that exists. And I say this from professional translators. This is like their secret sauce. Professional translators, this is what they use to help them. It is much better than Google Translate. So if you have words, sentences, paragraphs, text that you want to translate, this is the most accurate translation tool pretty much that exists. And so you can do free translations. One nice thing they do, they can translate entire documents and keep the format in the translation. But to do that, you need the paid version. But so sometimes I have a project where I need to translate an entire document. Then I just pay for 1 month, which is like €9. Is that yeah, €9 for 1 month, and you can translate up to 5 documents. So you do the big project, you just pay for that, but then the rest of the time you use a free version. So that is definitely what I recommend. Okay. Then for voice transcription, there's lots of free tools built into Windows and Mac, built into Microsoft Word, Google Doc. These all have automatic transcription built in. So as I said, my workflow a lot of the times, I talk, it's transcribed, and then I ask ChatGPT to polish my writing into polished academic writing. And I do that a lot now because of this workflow. I don't trust giving it a blank slate. I give it the initial draft and I let it augment, polish it, and I know its origin is mine. Okay. I've tested quite a number of tools, and I've been I found the best results for English translation, English transcription of voice from Otter.ai. OpenAI actually, which is a company that makes ChatGPT, they have a product called Whisper.ai, but it is not available in a user-friendly format yet. I think that might come later. But as far as the user-friendly versions, Otter.ai is the best quality, is the best results that I've had. So I use that a lot. There's a free version. You can try that to get started. The free version is a little bit limited. I think they only allow a certain number of minutes per month. I'm not sure how many uploads they allow. So yeah, 300 minutes a month. Then with only 30 minutes maximum. And one thing that is often useful is uploading files. If you have a recorded file, for instance, if you have interview transcripts that you want to convert to texts, you can upload them. So for that, again, sign up for 1 month, and then that gives more capabilities to do larger projects. I use it so much that I do the monthly quite a bit. Okay, depending on the projects I'm currently working on. Then now, actually, one thing that recently came up, that ChatGPT now has apps, Android and iOS apps, and you can actually talk to ChatGPT and it will talk back to you. This is really great. And one nice thing is that when you have a voice conversation with ChatGPT, it actually works pretty well. Though you need a strong internet connection. That's the only thing. If you don't have a strong internet connection, it doesn't work at all. But as long as you have that, whatever your conversation is, it transcribes it. And so it's saved in your history. So you can have that voice conversation, and you can go back, and you can continue the conversation by text later on. So that's another option. But when you have... I find that when I have longer things to say, it's easier to record it in Otter.ai, which does a better job in transcription. Let's see. So in the remaining time, I'd like to try to quickly give a case study. So this is a project that I've recently done where I'm entering... I mentioned earlier that I'm doing research on explainable AI, and this is a new field to me. So I recently wrote a working paper on that, and I used ChatGPT extensively to help me in doing that. And so this is a little case study which is similar to the process of writing a thesis in some ways. And so I'll kind of show you how I use generative AI in that. So first, this is computer programming based quite a bit. So I used ChatGPT in a lot of the computer programming. What I mean by that is, let's see. So for example, here I use the R programming language, and sometimes how do I do this little task? So I said, give me a function or some code that will replace not missing values in the matrix or the maximum value of the matrix. So a very specific programming task, and it wrote some code for me. And so with the code, and I needed to modify it a little bit, but that basically gave me the thing that I needed to do what I did. So if you have a little specific task, so I use that quite a lot along the process. So to give you an idea, the final result of the programming here is kind of the code that, ChatGPT did not generate most of this, but it helped me in the parts that I didn't understand well, or even if I could figure it out after maybe 15 minutes, I asked ChatGPT in 2 or 3 minutes, do this part here and there. So then I had this kind of documentation. This is my core idea, okay? Indeed, you can think of these as, these are my personal notes, and then I wanted to convert this to an academic article. So this is the draft that I generated myself, okay? Even with some help with the code part. Then I asked ChatGPT, so this was a new journal, it was a working paper, so it's in an online site called Archive, and I'd never published there before. So I asked ChatGPT, okay, to give me an outline of how should I structure this. Now, one thing that can really help you get good results whenever you use ChatGPT, begin a conversation by telling ChatGPT the role you want it to play. So in this case, I said, I want you to play the role of an expert researcher who publishes in the areas of machine learning statistics and is very familiar with the typical style of articles in Archive. And I am a budding machine learning scientist, and you're going to advise me on writing my first article. This actually really helps. So you could say, okay, ChatGPT, you're playing the role of a thesis advisor with many years of experience of advising master's students on how to write a thesis, and then you give me advice on how to do these parts of my thesis. The reason why the role play helps a lot, that when you just ask a question to ChatGPT, it will give a general answer to a general audience. But when you ask it to play the role of an expert, then it gives an answer that is kind of the best practices, and it will do much better in that. So starting with that as your first post, that helps a lot. And you can say, I have a long initial question. Usually I write my initial question in text, and then I copy and paste it, because I want to think carefully how I'm writing it. But you don't have to do that. You can write the first paragraph of the instructions, then it will respond, and you continue building your instructions. Say, hold on, here are my instructions, and when it's ready, then you start asking your questions. Okay. So I asked it basically, here's the purpose of my article, and ultimately I said, give me the outline structure of the article. Okay, and so here it prepared a structure. The introduction with these subsections, here's a literature review, and kind of what should go in each section. And so that was very useful to me, because I haven't written this kind of article before and presented an outline. My final article did not follow this exactly, but I use, especially the kind of things that should go there, I rearranged it. But there's some things that, I didn't realize I need to do this, so that was very helpful. So just getting an overall outline was very helpful in doing that. Then I went into some more detail. How about this section? What should that section go in? Okay, and I had some general questions there, like saying, should I split these topics in two, or should I put them together? And it gave me some considerations, so why I might do one or the other. And it said, here's some criteria you might consider. I answered this criteria. Here are the things that apply in my case. And then based on that, here's what it thinks that I should do. And so this really falls in the realm of, do I need an absolutely true answer? No. I'm just looking for ideas. Is it sensitive data? No. And actually, in this case, did I need legal ownership of the structure of my article? No. So actually, this should be enabled. That here I may freely use generative AI. Then later on, when I had so later on, when I kind of had structured my article, I had a major draft, and I put that in there. Well, actually, okay, so I put that in there. Let's see, what did I do? I asked it to kind of give me the structure, the outline of the article based on this draft I had, some notes I had, because sometimes you have a draft, then it summarized just the headings, which helped me say, okay, these are the headings, and that helped me in restructuring the article. Okay. Then some tasks I did, sometimes I had some ideas. There are some things I want to talk about. And a lot of times when I try to structure things, I write a table. So I had like maybe a table in Microsoft Excel. And so here, with some things, here's some things I want to talk about in the table. And then I pasted that into Excel. the technology I use is called Quarto, but I asked it to format it in that format. So it can convert your table from one format to another. And then here's something I found very useful. Once you pasted your table in there, I said, now summarize what I've written in the table. So I generated the table with information. I collected data that I want to talk about in text form. And I said, now write out what I've said here. So it basically takes the topics I arranged in the table, and it now writes paragraphs that now talk about those things. So I said, write a paragraph based on these details in the table, write it in one paragraph, and here it wrote a draft paragraph based on what I gave. Again, this is safe because I generated this. So what it writes up for me, I know it's not plagiarized, it comes from me. And I could copy and paste this text, I can modify it a little bit and use it in my eventual article. Then I said, okay, here, remove some details, some things, you have some dates, I don't like this part of it, remove the dates you put there and put it all in one paragraph. So it made those modifications. But then there's some things that said I thought it was too exaggerated. I saying this thing is really great, and so I said, okay, I don't like that language. Don't be so exaggerated, and things like that. It rewrote the same thing in more modest language. So if you don't like the language style, tell it what you don't like. It rewrites it. So you don't have to directly edit it, what it says. You just tell it what you don't like about what it did, back and forth, and then finally, that's much better. Continue like this for the rest. So once you fine-tune how you want it to write, then you can give it more tasks, and then it can continue like that. So think of it very interactively, and then you can get the results you want. It will almost never do it quite the way you want in the first try, but this interaction to tell it what you don't like, polish it, it eventually gets to where you want. The literature search, okay, so for the literature search, I've shown you some tools. So eventually, I think I used ChatGPT Plus with plugins. The videos I linked show you how to do that. But ultimately, within ChatGPT, it used consensus search to help me find some articles that talked about the topic. So it's a technique called accumulated local effects. So we found some key articles about that topic. Then I looked up the articles because it has the links to the articles, direct links. Sometimes it doesn't have the full text, but when a lot of the articles in consensus, it has them because the full text is available. And a lot of articles, if it doesn't have the full text, then you can search in the SKEMA database and then get the full text for a lot of the articles that are linked here. So based on, okay, so that gave me some key references that I could then include. Editing voice transcriptions. So I've already talked about how okay, so one thing I did is that, so sometimes I find some articles that I find are relevant and I want to summarize them. And so this is not safe because it's someone else's words. If I ask ChatGPT to summarize it, it will probably include some plagiarized content. So what I did is that after reading or skimming the articles, I spoke in my words my understanding of the article. So sometimes I use Otter AI to do this. Sometimes I use ChatGPT app to talk to it. And there's actually a plugin where I can talk to ChatGPT directly on the browser. So I use that sometimes too. But here I spoke my understanding of the article. And I asked ChatGPT to rewrite it in polished language. And so here it rewrote it. But here it really rewrote it a lot. And I say, wait, no, I don't want you to change my wording and add too much. Just write in simple English because it was too academic for me. But then just polish my English. So it rewrote it in a way that I liked a lot better. And then I gave some more. So one item at a time, I gave my understanding of something. Then it rewrote it. Okay, now next. One thing I didn't do here that you can say is after you speak and it polishes, ask, how accurate is this? Is this understanding? And then it might point out some things that are obviously inaccurate or not. Again, it's not perfect, but this is based on what I think is accurate. So I'm not trusting in ChatGPT to depend on that. Then once I had finished the bulk of the article, whenever I write, the introduction is the last thing I write. Okay, I think it's okay. So when I've written the bulk of the sections, then in writing the introduction, conclusion, and abstract, so what I did is I gave ChatGPT the outline of the article. Okay, so I'll show you how I did that here. Sorry, it's taking a bit of time to connect here. Okay, so here, let's see, just starting with the outline. Okay, so like here's one section, the discussion section, proceeding, and I wanted to give it, I'd already written the contents of the discussion, but I wanted to write just an introduction for that section. So that this is like the introductory part of a chapter of your thesis. So here I gave it the outline of the whole article, of everything that came before. So I wanted to summarize that. And then here are the key things I said in that section. And I said, write an introductory paragraph for this section or for this chapter. So I gave it all that. ChatGPT 4, the paid version, you can include longer text than shorter ones. And here it wrote me an introduction paragraph for that and said, okay, that's good. And I edited it a little bit. Then it said, based on that, write a conclusion. So like a conclusion chapter or conclusion section for the article based on the outline and all that. Again, this is safe because up to this point, I have written the outline. I have already written these sections, and I'm just asking it to give summaries of what I've written. So that is safe. So it wrote a conclusion paragraph for me, and then I went to the introduction section. And so for composing the introduction, these are really some of my notes. And I said, write this, combine this in polished language, and from there created an introduction for me, and paragraph by paragraph. So write one part that summarizes this, then here's the outline of the article, write an outline, a paragraph that describes how it's structured, and so it said the rest of the article is organized as follows, and there it goes. So this really speeds up your writing by giving it especially these structural parts, by giving stuff you've already written, asking it to write an introduction with a flow, then that's very safe and it helps in a lot of the writing process. Then now almost always to write the abstract of an article, I copy and paste the introduction. I give the introduction and ask it, and it creates an abstract. Okay, wait, but that's too long. Redo it until it gets it to the way I like. But so those are all the parts, and here's a link to the final article that's finished with all these this composition. Okay, and so the final article has these sections. So a lot of the content here, as you saw, came from ChatGPT with minor with some editing from me. And finally, in the acknowledgement section at the very end, I think in master's thesis, the acknowledgement is at the beginning, but here in the academic article, the acknowledgements, we used ChatGPT in developing the outline of this article and in drafting much of the text. The author takes full responsibility for the entirety of the final revised content. In addition, we used ChatGPT extensively in developing the code for the ALE package. And that's my quotation or acknowledgement of ChatGPT in that case. Okay, so that's my little case study. Sorry for going over time, but yes, if there are any final
Was
questions or
super,
so on.
super interesting, and I think that you could be a nightmare for the majority of the supervisor we have at SKEMA, because you gave in this hour and a half so many insights to simplify the life of a person that wants to write a good dissertation. Because I mean, I don't know if you were familiar with all the tools. So I think that if we are smart enough to use this tool in a correct way, I think we can save a lot of time and energies in the process. Thank you a lot for it was super. Your speech was full of insights, not only for my students but also for me, actually. Yes.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. And I hope you can see I learned a lot even in preparing this, and I discovered new tools that that hopefully I'll be using myself.